Hi, it's Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec. Today I'm here for Scrap and Stamp, an online paper crafting shop in Vancouver, British Columbia. This shop is very well stocked in tools for scrapbooking and card making. I'm going to be creating a quick and easy 12 by 12 layout featuring dies from Tim Holtz and Spellbinders and a 6 by 6 paper pad from Gina K Designs. At the end of this video, I'll share two cards I created with the very same tools. You're about to see the paper I'll be using. So I'm pairing the 6 by 6 Sunshiny Day paper pack from Gina K with 12 by 12 paper and cardstock from my stash, including wood grain paper from Simple Stories. Everything I use from Scrap and Stamp will be listed and linked below. So let's get started. In advance, I prepared a frame style foundation page with 3 sheets of paper and I gutted 2 of them. There is a tutorial on my channel where I explain how to do that, so that will be listed and linked below. I'm showing you that I rounded the corners on the white cardstock. Now I'm going to be documenting one photo of Chester. He's my kitty cat. I want to show you the paper I'll be using. So obviously I've already created my foundation page with wood grain paper and pink and white cardstock. This paper pack is from Gina K Designs. It is very vibrant in color. The paper is glossy and it's one-sided. I also have a handful of scraps. So I have the paper that I gutted from behind my foundation page. I also have some white cardstock. And I have a scrap of metallic paper, which is from Tim Holtz as well. Now let's have a look at the tools I will be using. You will get a closer look throughout the process, but let's have a brief look right now. The first one is postage edge rectangle dies from Spellbinders. This set has 8 dies, 4 postage edge rectangles, and a layering piece for each one of them. They are very detailed. A great basic shape to have in your stash, but it's like a basic shape plus. The little detailing is gorgeous. Another die set is the Artful Brush die set from Spellbinders. It's basically a paintbrush with some little added extras. This is a floral die set from Tim Holtz called Funky Floral 1. I also have a stamp set from Tim Holtz. It's called Perspectives. I'm going to be using this as my title. I got this one about a year ago from Scrap and Stamp, and if it's still available, I will list it below. So the first die set I'm going to be playing with is the postage edge rectangle die set from Spellbinders. So what I'm going to be doing here is creating 3 blocks for my layout. I'm going to be cutting out 3 postage edge rectangles. Actually, one of them I did it already because the largest one measures 6 inches long and my paper is 6 by 6, so I didn't want to mess it up on camera. But I'm cutting out a few more here. So I've got this medium one and I will cut out a smaller one as well. And there's actually another smaller one than that, but I don't use it. Now for this one, I'm going to cut it out right from the middle of the larger one, simply because all of these rectangles are going to be layered up and covered. So this hole will be covered and I didn't want to, waste paper. Anyway, now what I'm going to do is cut out the layering pieces. So like I mentioned earlier, each one of these postage edge rectangles has a layering piece. These are detailed as well with little dots around all of the edges. Super, super beautiful. So if you can't see it right now, you will see them in the still shots at the very end of this video. I cut out 2 in the white cardstock, and off camera I cut out the smaller one in graph paper. These 3 blocks are going to, number 1, map my photo, number 2, house the main embellishment cluster, and number 3 will be a journaling box. So you'll see all of that in a moment, completely ready to use. So there you have it. Now what I'm going to do with my 4 by 6 photo of Chester is trim it down. So now it measures 4 by 5 1/4 and it fits perfectly in the largest block. And I'm going to place these 3 blocks on the page to give you an idea where I'm going with this. What I do want to do before adhering anything is apply a bit of ink to the white foundation page. The color I'm using is Rococo Rose from Stampin' Up. It was simply the closest pink I could find to match the pink in that Sunshiny Day paper pack. So I apply it in 2 areas, the top right and more or less the bottom left. It would be a great time to add mixed media splatters, anything like that, if you're into that. Now what I'm going to do is start creating my embellishment. So I'm going to start with the die set Artful Brush by Spellbinders. This one builds a paintbrush. So you can see there I have a paintbrush handle in that floral paper just to make a whimsical paintbrush handle. I also have paintbrush bristles. I'm doing that in pink. And in that metallic paper, basically it cuts out kind of a rim for the paintbrush handle. And you'll see where I adhere that a little bit later on when I build the paintbrush. I'm just punching out a second die with, how should I say this? I'm punching out another bunch of bristles with this die. These are in pink now, but they do get switched up later on in the process. I will adhere that paintbrush later on, but first what I want to do is cut out a bunch of flowers with this die set called Funky Florals, one from Tim Holtz. So this die set comes with 17 pieces, a bunch of flowers and leaves. I'm going to be cutting out 3 different flowers and 3 different leaves, so you can see me running it through my die cutting machine right now. Once again, using some scraps of paper from this Sunshiny Day collection. This is kind of a whimsical page, and also this paper, the print on the paper is very, very small. So it's kind of fun cutting out flowers and leaves with this tight woven print. It just adds a little bit of interest to the die cut pieces, and they're just kind of fun, that's all. So you can see I continued cutting out flowers and leaves off camera. I'm showing you that on the tray right now. I also cut out those little tiny white ones with white cardstock, again with a die from that collection. What you see me doing now is continuing to adhere these pieces together. So I put a little dab of liquid glue in the middle of each one of these flowers. And when I die cut those flowers, each flower die cut also had a flower middle in it. So I just switched up the middles, put the yellow middle on the pink flower and the pink middle on the yellow flower. Now I'm building the paintbrush, so I put that metallic rim at the front of it, and now from behind I adhered the bristles. So those are 2 sets of bristles behind the brush at this point. What I want to do right now is create my main embellishment cluster, and I'm going to be doing that on top of the medium block here. So I am adhering the paintbrush handle towards the bottom of the page. I literally bent back all of those bristles, and now what I'm going to do is basically build a floral cluster that's going to be popping out of the paintbrush. And I'm starting with the smaller pieces, those wispy green leaves. I adhered them with that adhesive you see on my left. That is called Sticky Specks by Ecstasy Crafts. Then I'm coming in with bigger pieces, the pink flowers, the yellow flowers. Then I will come in and tuck in some of the more solid leaves. There's 2 things I'd like to mention about what I'm doing right now. Number 1, the idea to pop flowers out of a paintbrush handle came from Paige Evans, a class I took from her last November. Her page looked different than what I'm doing. She used ephemera, not die cuts, but the idea came from her. Also, as I'm building this cluster, while I'm doing it, it doesn't feel quite right. I'm not quite liking it, but I continue because I know what I want. I want just a big bunch of flowers and leaves. And it's not going to be a big bunch of flowers and leaves until I finish. I wanted to point that out because people often doubt themselves when they are building clusters, but in here, I am doubting myself as well. I just keep building it. I just want to point out that that is normal. So you can see I have added the little white flowers last. For those ones, I popped them up on foam adhesive. Now I'm adding an enamel dot to the middle of each one of those white flowers. And what I'm not liking at this point are the pink bristles on the brush because I can't see them. They basically blend into my floral cluster. So I am looking for some contrasting paper to cut out some more bristles. And I end up doing that off camera. You're going to see that in a moment. I cut out bristles with that brown and yellow paper. It's still from that same Sunshiny Day collection. So what I'm going to have to do is lift up that paintbrush handle, and it comes up no problem, thankfully. And I'm removing the pink bristles. So what I'm doing is replacing them with the brown and yellow bristles, and that will give me the contrast I was looking for. I end up adhering the pink bristles behind the brown ones. I figured, what the heck, I have them anyway. It just made for a more fluffy brush, and the contrasting bristles are on the front, and that's what I was looking for. So now I'm adhering once again that paintbrush handle just underneath my flower burst there, and I'm very happy with that at this point. I am going to come in with just a bit of foam adhesive and tuck it behind a few of the leaves that are a bit more solid. That just adds a little bit of texture and interest in this embellishment cluster. And you may notice it looks like a card front because basically that's all it is. Now what I'm going to do is adhere these 3 blocks to my foundation page. Now I'm going to be adhering them a little bit to the right. Here, if you're following along, I invite you to play around a bit with placement. This would look equally nice centered on the page. Basically, play around with it and decide what you like best. I decide to adhere them just tossed a bit to the right. So that's what I'm doing right now. And once this is done, all I have to do is create a title and then a few finishing touches. That's it, and my page will be done. Now for my title, I'm going to be using that stamp set I showed you earlier from Tim Holtz called Perspective. So my title is going to be There is Beauty in Simplicity. So I'm going to start by stamping the sentiment on white cardstock, and the ink I'm using is Early Espresso from Stampin' Up! Now, in order to turn this into a title, I'm going to want to primp it up a bit. I'm going to get out some dies from my stash. The ones I'm going to be using are called Stitched So Sweetly, something like that. It is a past collection from Stampin' Up! And basically, again, it's another die set with a bunch of more or less basic shapes. So you can see it's going to punch out my title, and then once I punch this out, then I will punch out a mat with it. This could easily be done with the very same dies that I already used, the rectangle edge dies. But what I would like to point out here, like the rectangle edge dies and these dies I'm using right now, having basic shape dies in your stash are very, very useful. In this case, I'm using them to kind of beef up my title. So I'm adhering the white on top of that wood grain paper. I'm backing the wood grain paper with some more scrap cardstock. That's because I'm going to want to pop it up on foam adhesive, and I'm basically placing it where it intersects the 3 other blocks. By popping it up and by punching out that stamped sentiment, it just brings a lot more attention to those words and makes it more what I like to call title worthy. It just stands out more. Now what I'm going to do is add a few more flowers and leaves to the bottom left corner of my journaling box. Basically, what I'm doing here is creating a repetition of the main embellishment cluster, and I want this to be smaller than the big one, just a repetition of that. So you saw me come in, I adhered the wispy leaves, Then I came in with the yellow flower. I do pop up the pink flower with foam adhesive. I added those leaves first, and then I'll come in once again and add one of those tiny white flowers. Again, a small repetition of the main embellishment cluster. For another finishing touch, I'm just going to add 2 enamel dots to the title, and that is basically it. All I had left to do was my journaling. So that is it. So I hope this video serves as a reminder that paper crafting tools are not just for cards. They are great for scrapbooking layouts as well. And as promised, here are a few cards I created using the same tools in Sunshiny Day 6x6 paper pack. For one of them, I created the paintbrush as the dies intended, and for the other, I created a floral burst with the Tim Holtz Funky Floral 1 dies, like I did on the layout. If you enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, Scrapbooking Quebec, I would be thrilled if you did. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very, very much. Don't forget to check out Scrap and Stamp for these fun supplies and much, much more. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.